Mhm.
polar opposite, or more, there may be more conflict under the surface. And so could you share with us
Yeah.
some of your experiences?
Okay, thank you. It's a good question. I think what's really important and what allows people room to listen to me is that usually the people I talk to know about my own life experience and the background of the race that I belong to. And if you can speak from that place of forgiveness or reconciliation or being open to others and willing to find a new way forward, that people can sense that. So when we have workshops, and I'm usually a lead person in the workshop, we try to set the tone for that safe place and that spiritual place. And we do it by ritual and ceremony. We invite others who may express ritual or ceremony, or they may just want to be present when it's happening and be respectful about it. But we directly seek the consent of others to consider this to be a safe place. That in a circle, everybody has a right to be here. Everybody has a voice and is entitled to be heard, however divergent the idea or the voice might be. That we're here together because out of the sharing of our common truths, or your truth and my truth, emerges a new reality between us. The old walls, the old realities of hate and racism and prejudice cannot be broken down without some new understanding between us. And it only happens because we feel safe enough, and it's a sacred space that, in spite of where we might have come from in the past, we have a right to be here to talk about it, and we find a new way forward. And I think reconciliation essentially is finding a new way forward, however that is. There should be nobody in this room that comes here and says, I have a predetermined truth and it's the only truth that has any value and I'm going to hold on to it. I think that humanity belongs to the universe. It's not yours, not because you're your color or my color or I speak my language. It belongs to all of us. So how then are we going to begin to give expression to the wholeness of our humanity? Have you ever thought about that? That's really important. Otherwise we'll have these divides, these solitudes, like I keep saying. And so we need, really, really need that discussion. Thank you.
There was another question right here.
Mine was pretty close to hers, is that we talked about visualizing the future together. How do you visualize our future together?
Yeah, you know when I was in Israel a long time ago, a few years ago, and I was just starting out on this work thinking I got to roll somewhere in this place. And I was waiting in the basement of this big theater. There's a stage, and I'm waiting to go and we meet on this. They built a bridge and a stage where we meet and reconcile with other people. And I saw these young people. They kept looking at me and kept looking at me. And I thought, I better go over and say hello to them. They're curious. So finally I went over. They were really happy to see me and welcome me. And then the father, it was the guy and his wife and the mother with a little child, right? The father said, do you really think that peace can happen here? And this is in the Holy Land where conflict is a daily reality, right? Ugly as it is. And I was stunned for a moment and I said, I don't know for sure. But all I know is that you and I have some responsibility. Otherwise, this little one, your little child, won't have any hope of anything different other than the conflict. So I carried that with me all the time, remembering. And then I was in a synagogue one day, and the oldest guy in the synagogue was sitting right under my nose. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to ask me questions, because I was always afraid, because they have a real experience through that. And they keep telling us we can't measure or compare these experiences. They're all valid. But nonetheless, the horror of the story is so monumental to me but I just got to be respectful of it. He's going to ask me some hard question. So I gave my talk about reconciliation, gave a history of residential schools and their impacts, and sure enough, his was the first hand to go up when I stopped, when I asked for questions. And he said, do you really think that we as people can forgive those other people who did the harm? And for the second time, I said, I don't know for sure. But all I know is it begins with you and I. And that's really the secret of staying on this issue, of simply being committed where you are, keeping it simple, doing what it is that you can do, and maybe once in a while doing something really complex and monumental, but doing what you can to bring about reconciliation. Some workshops, I ask people to create their own personal back pocket reconciliation action plan. What will you do after today to promote reconciliation? So if you're a teacher, you might say, oh, you know what, I'm going to pay special attention to Aboriginal kids or other unfortunate kids. Or you might talk about curriculum improvement. Or if you owned a kayak company, you might say, you know what, I need a guide. I think I'm going to get an Aboriginal guide, or whatever it is. But there are things that we could do. Maybe it's simple as say hello to an Aboriginal person you meet in the street. Just a smile and a hello, little things. Sometimes you save lives by those simple little gestures. Sometimes you inspire people for the rest of their lives because they know your heart's in the right place and they know that somebody else cares, that others care. So, thank you.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for your talk. I was at a luncheon the other day, and Peter C. Newman was speaking, and as you know, the Aboriginal youth are the fastest growing demographic in Canada, and his take on that was that we're virtually sitting on a time bomb, because if we don't reach out and get to the youth and get them on board as far as reconciliation, you know, the Okas of the world are just there waiting to happen if we can't reach them. You know, how do you find in your travels reaching out and acceptance, or, you know, are we reaching these?
Yeah, that's really super important question, because really that's all we're talking about. I mean, for old guys like me, I'm okay. I'm going to get through it. You know, I'm going to make my final day feeling good about myself, finally accepting myself as some worthy human being. But for young guys, they live in this country. Many of the young people, young guys, many people don't have that sense of hope. They don't have a sense of being a part of us, part of Canada. They don't have any sense that there's a promise of meaningful employment or purpose or value in their lives. Too many of them feel that way, and there's far too much despair in the communities. So you get addictions, you get violence, you get all forms of abuse. And young people living out their lives in vacuums of that despair and hopelessness. The other thing I do as well, I talk in high schools, and there are, in our schools, of course, every race on earth is here in our schools, and even among our children there now, the divisions are starting to exist. We're afraid of each other for some reason. And unless we talk to each other, that fear of each other is going to grow and manifest into just those things that we don't want to see in Canada, right?
Chief Joseph, thank you very much for sharing with us today. You made a really strong comparison between genocide in terms of the Holocaust, but you don't use that word in terms of experience in Canada. Many of us have these conversations with other people and we avoid the G word. Is it too inflammatory? Is it helpful? I'm looking for your advice on
Yeah,
that.
I know what you're saying. I've been working on this issue for about a decade and a half now, and I've been really proud of some of the work I've done. Some of it's been just that work. I was part of the a group of 4 people who sat with the Prime Minister for half a day to do his apology. He apparently tore up his original apology, and because of our guidance, did a really good apology. I'm not going to read it, but I have one here. And I think that's become an instrument along the way. However much people might dislike